Hello, and welcome to another video from the Fisherman's Net and Saints Peter and Paul in Naperville, Illinois. In these past videos, we've been talking about how to evaluate a moral act. And we saw that there are some systems or some ways of evaluating moral acts that are insufficient. So we looked at some ways of evaluating moral acts that look, say, only at the consequences of an act. Does an act hurt someone? What's the outcome? And if we look solely at the consequences, that's only a piece of a moral act. Or other systems look simply at the intentions of the one acting. Is the person acting sincerely? Again, that's a piece of the moral act, but it's not the whole of the act. So we want to ask in this video, well, what are the pieces of evaluating a moral act as either good or evil? And we can say that a moral act is like a tricycle. We need three parts, three wheels that are all functioning, that are all good for the act itself to be good. If any one of these three wheels is flat, or in this case bad or evil, then the act itself is bad or evil. So the one piece that these other systems really don't take into account is what's called the moral object, or that is the act itself. What is the act? So our Catholic tradition says there are some acts that in and of themselves, irregardless of consequences, irregardless of the intentions of the person doing it, there are some acts that are just wrong. Some acts that are contrary to our human nature or contrary to love of God and love of others. And those acts that are wrong, no matter what, completely independent of consequences or situations, we call those acts intrinsically evil. And for an intrinsically evil act, there's no consequence, there's no good intention that can make them right. Now, we all understand this somewhat intuitively with extreme examples. Extreme examples are always sometimes the clearest. So, for instance, rape. There is no consequence, good consequence that could come about that would make that a good act. There is no intention on the part of the one perpetrating that we would say, well, that makes it a good act. We all see that that's an intrinsically evil act. We probably all agree on other ones, like racial slavery. There's no good consequence that could justify that. There's no good intention that could justify that. It's an intrinsically evil act. The problem is a lot of people don't agree on what constitutes an intrinsically evil act. And our church teaches what some of those are. Intentionally killing an innocent person, something like abortion, is an intrinsically evil act. No consequence or outcome can justify it. No good intention can justify it. Artificial contraception is an intrinsically evil act. Another example would be euthanasia, intrinsically evil act. So that's one piece we have to look at, and we have to look at it first. What is the act itself? If the act is evil in and of itself, intrinsically evil, we can stop there. We don't even really need to consider our motives or what the outcome will be. The ends do not justify the means. The act is evil. But a good action, we can, if we have a good action, a good moral object, we still need to look at two other aspects. We need to look first at the circumstances, and that includes the consequences, right? So what are the circumstances of the act? Good circumstances can never make an evil action good, but it can make an evil action worse. For instance, theft is an evil action, but depending on who I'm stealing from and what I'm stealing, it can be made worse. Those are circumstances. And then for a morally good act, we also need to look at the motive or the intentions of the one acting. Again, we can't take an intrinsically evil act and make it good with good intentions. The end does not justify the means. but we can actually take an otherwise good act and lessen its goodness or even turn it evil by a bad intention. So for instance, it's a good act to give money to charity or to those in need. But if our intention is not to help anyone, or not out of love of neighbor or God, but really just for pride and vainglory and to be seen, that actually it can lessen the good of the act or even make it an evil act of selfishness. So again, really what to focus on here is that there are three aspects, three tires on our tricycle of a moral act. The object or the act itself, the circumstances that it's done in, and the intentions or motive of the person. And all three of those need to be good. If any one of those is lacking, we don't have a morally good act. So here's an example where this comes into play. So with euthanasia, or sometimes called mercy killing, where there may be, on the part of the people involved, a good intention. We want our relative, our loved one, to be out of pain. That's a good intention, to want someone to be free from pain. And actually, there may be a good consequence of the act of euthanasia. Someone is relieved of pain. Now we have to notice also there are bad consequences. The person's dead. But we can see that if we look solely at the intention or the circumstances, the consequences, those can be good. But we need to take into account the act itself of directly killing another innocent human being. And we would say that that is one of those intrinsically evil acts that no consequences or circumstances or intentions can justify. And so that front tire of our tricycle is already flat. So that's a beginning on how we evaluate moral acts. So there are three components. And our Catholic faith really looks at the totality of the act. What it is, the circumstances of who and how and where, and then the intentions, why. We look at the totality of the act to judge its morality. In future videos coming up, we'll look at some more aspects of moral acts, what makes an act moral, what doesn't, and we'll look at the vices and virtues. So stay tuned for that.